What's going on, everybody? This is Tyler Shepherdson with On the Pipe Podcast, and today we're down in beautiful Union, South Carolina at Randy Hawk's personal property, the Silver Hawk Ranch, doing some testing on these brand new Yamahas. We got the yz450fx, all new for 2024. So we got to do the shakedown and got to come down here and test these things out in some slick conditions. So first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Yamaha for having us down to this event. This is just the press intro. So this is where they unveil the new models and let the press kind of come in and take a look and get a feel for the bike. And that's exactly what we're doing here, and let you know a little bit about what we think about this year's new model. Also, I want to give a big shout out to FXR. FXR got us hooked up for the weekend. Gear, goggles, helmet, got us dialed in so that way we weren't out here looking like rookies while riding these brand new race machines. So yeah, we'll start things off today. We rode the yz450fx. Tomorrow will be the two-stroke day where they will unveil the yz125x and the yz250x. The impressions of riding the 450 out here today: we got to ride it in all sorts of different conditions. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a sprint enduro here. So they left the loops pretty much set up how they were at that race. So we had a cross test on one side that included the motocross track that's out here, and then an enduro loop that was more of a tight and technical wood section. So we really got to test the best of both worlds and really see how this bike performed in all conditions. Now, earlier this week on Monday, we did get a little bit of rain down here in South Carolina. That made for some pretty slick conditions, especially to start the day. But the more laps everybody was turning and the sun coming out, we were able to get some good traction, and the track really came in really well and tacked up nicely throughout the afternoon. So a couple of things I want to talk about first. This year's model, one of the things that I've noticed as a major improvement from previous year models of the YZs is the front end feel. The front end of this motorcycle goes exactly where you want it to go. I've ridden a lot of Yamahas in the past, and it was always kind of a setup issue to get that front wheel tracking like you'd like. This bike, bone stock, straight out of the box, it's really hooking up really well, especially on that front end. So the bike also comes stock with Dunlop MX33 tires. I think that also helps a lot because, like I said, it really gives you a planted feeling in that front end. Wherever I wanted to point the front end and go, even with these slick conditions down here in the Carolina clay, the bike would really hook up and go exactly where I wanted it to go. When I started off into a rut and could see that I would get buried farther into the rut, this thing would pop out pretty easily, jump straight up out of it, and able to go up and around. So that was one thing that I really got comfortable with, and having the confidence in knowing that if you try to get out of that rut early, that the bike is going to perform and it's going to get you out and not leave you cross-rutted. One of the other things that I noticed on this bike is the map switch. So the map switch, they changed it up a little bit, but it's over here on the left side of the bar. It comes stock with a map that you can tweak and change a little bit, courtesy of the Yamaha Power Tuner app. And they really did a number of improvements to that app as well. But the stock mapping is really good. If you hit the button, the blue light will come on. The blue light kind of tames it down just a little bit. So when we were out here riding in the woods, especially as it got slick, was able to turn that blue light map on. That kind of just took the hit off a little bit, made it not as strong of a hit, which out here in the slick conditions, that really helped out a lot. And you can really notice a big difference between those two different map settings that come stock on the bike. Now, this is actually our first press intro coming down and doing an event like this. So working with other manufacturers with the podcast, I haven't experienced the last rendition of these Yamaha bikes either, but things that I've noticed since I was last on a Yamaha, the fork clickers. You no longer need a screwdriver. You don't need to have that perfect flathead that can fit down in there perfectly. There are big knobs on here that you can do right on the fly. So you don't need any tools or anything to adjust your clickers. We put them right in the middle and realistically didn't even touch them. I'm just over 200 pounds. This bike, stock suspension, stock setup, clickers right in the middle. I really had no issue with it. There was some spots where you could get into some braking bumps. The bike really held up really well through the braking bumps and through the chatter. So I was impressed with that. Really didn't mess with any of the clickers at all throughout the day. Basically, the only adjustment that we made to the bike was a little creature comfort settings. The bars are in the stock position as well. Did change a little bit of the levers. The other thing is we let a little bit of air out of the tires. So when we got out here, it was kind of skating around a little bit, but found out that just with the conditions, there was a little bit more air pressure in the tire. It was actually up over 16. So dropped that down to 13, and that made a big difference and really had us finding a lot more traction out here on this machine. The other thing that is very noticeable about this bike straight off the bat is the power, but it is such a manageable power. The power is there. If you really want to get onto it, this bike will rock it out from underneath you. Almost did that a couple times, but we kept it under control. But the power is also very manageable. This is a bike that makes a lot of power down low. You can really feel it coming on out of the corners. Even, like I said, being a little bit over 200 pounds, I can still really lug this thing in and out of corners and even going up hills, and it's gonna keep going and it's gonna keep pulling throughout that RPM range, especially down low. That really makes that power very usable. If you like revving the bike out, you can keep this bike in second gear pretty much anywhere on the track and really just pull all the way through second gear. Myself, I like to lug the bike. So I can literally put this bike in third gear and leave the shift lever in the van, not even touch it. This thing will go to a dead stop and pull you out of a corner in third gear, and it'll go as fast as any average person needs to go right there in third gear. So it was very usable power, and that is one of the things I noticed about this bike as well. A couple other things that changed for this year model that we did want to talk about. They managed to make the seat a little bit flatter. So all the way from the cockpit area back to the rear fender, it is a little bit lower than last year's model. That helps a lot, especially I got short legs. So when you're trying to swing a leg back over it, it really does help a lot. Just that little bit of a difference in the seat height and the rear fender height. It is a noticeable difference. The other thing is in the cockpit area, they've really trimmed up this area right here, right where your knees are gonna go. When Yamaha put the intake up front, that's one of the things that people always notice about the bikes, is that they do have a little bit of a wider feeling. Once you get on and ride just a little, not even much at all, you don't even notice that, especially right where your knees are typically at. And then it actually goes thinner up to the front before it flares out for that air intake. So you can notice those improvements a lot over the previous generations of Yamahas. But once you get riding the bike, I think that is a non-issue anymore. I think it's a very comfortable feeling, and it definitely allows you a lot of points right here to grip with your legs. The other thing that I want to talk about, and being down here in the Carolinas myself, I got to be pretty good buddies with all the Ampro Yamaha riders, and I was actually talking with them about this over the past couple years when Yamaha introduced it, and might have been helping out with those starts. I'm not going to take credit for it, but hey, there's a lot of hole shots coming off these blue bikes. But Yamaha actually has a fast idler, or a hot start, that is right there on the front of the throttle body. This one is a little bit unique because you can press the button in, and that is going to increase the RPM temporarily of the motor. The good thing about this, or the convenient thing about this, is that way when you roll the throttle off, it automatically pops that button right back out, so then you're back to your regular RPMs for the rest of the race. Now, that does come in handy when you're starting your bike when it's hot, or even when you're cold starting it. If it's been really cold, you can hit that fast idle and it'll help it get going. But also, we're racing these things in the woods. This is a GNCC weapon. This is an enduro weapon. A lot of times you're starting with a dead engine start, where you have to start with the bike turned off, get it cranked, and get going. That fast idle button makes it so much easier to get this bike fired up quickly and get off the line and get those hole shots. But yeah, we put several hours on this bike today. We had a blast down here riding. We're gonna talk about it more in the podcast. We'll do a full show talking about the breakdowns of the bikes, but the technical information, that is all available on Yamaha's website. You can see all the specifications of these motorcycles. I just wanted to bring you the first impressions from an average everyday rider and the things that we can notice right away on this bike. But from everything that I've done on this bike, phenomenal performance, really good job on this 2024 Yamaha 450fx.